Critical Minerals and Hydrocarbons of Africa. The global industrial economy is currently navigating a fundamental transition from hydrocarbon-intensive energy systems to mineral-intensive technologies. This shift has placed the African continent, a geologically ancient and diverse landmass, at the center of international strategic planning. The continent holds approximately 30% of the world's proven mineral reserves, including dominant shares of the metals required for electric vehicle batteries, hydrogen fuel cells, and renewable energy storage systems. By the mid-2020s, the narrative surrounding African mining has evolved from simple extraction to complex questions of geological potential, industrial processing capacity, global market integration, and logistical resilience. The first part of this review provides an exhaustive analysis of 5 critical mineral categories: lithium, cobalt, manganese, graphite, and platinum group metals, PGMs, that define the continent's strategic value in the 2025-2026 period. The assessment focuses strictly on the geological realities of the deposits, the technical capacities for processing these ores into tradable commodities, the market dynamics governing their trade, and the logistical infrastructure required to move them from the mine face to the global market. Lithium, the hard rock revolution. Lithium has emerged as the defining mineral of the modern battery age. While South America dominates brine-based lithium production, Africa has rapidly ascended as a global hub for hard rock lithium mining. This sector has witnessed an unprecedented surge in exploration and development between 2023 and 2026, driven by the geological abundance of lithium, cesium, tantalum pegmatites across the continent. The strategic focus has shifted from identifying resources to developing the industrial capacity to concentrate and refine these ores domestically. The geological endowment of lithium in Africa is primarily hosted in pegmatites, which are coarse-grained igneous rocks that formed during the late stages of magma crystallization. These formations are geologically distinct from the brine deposits of the lithium triangle in South America and offer different extraction economics and processing requirements. In Zimbabwe, the geological landscape is dominated by the Zimbabwe Craton, an Archean crustal block that hosts some of the world's most significant LCT pegmatite systems. The Bakita deposit in Masvingo province stands as a geological anomaly of immense scale. Historically the world's largest known deposit of lithium, Bakita contains approximately 11 million tons of ore. The deposit is complex, featuring zoned mineralization that includes petalite, spodumene, and lepidolite, alongside pollucite, a lithium ore, and tantalite. This zoning allows for the extraction of multiple lithium minerals, each with distinct industrial applications. Petalite has traditionally been used in the glass and ceramics industry due to its low iron content, while spodumene is the preferred feedstock for battery-grade lithium hydroxide production. Further north, near Harare, the Arcadia Lithium project exploits a series of stacked pegmatites within the greenstone belts of the Zimbabwe Craton. The geological resource here is substantial, estimated at over 72 million tons with a lithium oxide grade of approximately 1.06%. This unique mineralogy of Arcadia includes significant quantities of both spodumene and petalite, allowing for a diversified product stream that can service both the technical and chemical markets. The Zulu Lithium project near Bulawayo represents another major undeveloped resource, where pegmatite bodies intrude along serpentine and sedimentary rocks over a strike length of several kilometers. The mineralogy at Zulu varies across the strike, with northern pegmatites rich in spodumene and lepidolite, while southern zones are dominated by petalite. In the Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC, the Manano Katolo deposit represents a geological giant of the Kibaran Belt. This belt, which extends for over 1,000 kilometers through Central Africa, hosts pegmatites of exceptional size and continuity. The Roche-Dur ore body at Manano has reported resources of 400 million tons at a high grade of 1.65% lithium oxide. This makes it one of the largest and highest grade undeveloped hard rock lithium deposits globally. The geology is characterized by fresh, unweathered spodumene that is highly amenable to dense media separation, a physical processing method that relies on the density difference between the lithium minerals and the waste rock. West Africa has also emerged as a critical lithium frontier. Mali's Goulamina project hosts high-grade spodumene pegmatites with resources exceeding 100 million tons. The deposit consists of a series of parallel, steeply dipping dikes that are amenable to open-pit mining with relatively low stripping ratios. Similarly, Ghana's Ewaya project features coarse-grained spodumene pegmatites that allow for simple gravity separation, a geological characteristic that significantly reduces the capital intensity of the processing plant. Namibia's Karibib project presents a different geological profile, focusing on lepidolite, a lithium-bearing mica rather than just spodumene. This mineralogy requires distinct processing routes, but allows for the recovery of valuable byproducts like rubidium and cesium, which are concentrated in the mica crystal structure. Processing capacity and industrialization. The processing landscape for lithium in Africa has undergone a radical transformation driven by policy mandates and industrial necessity. In the early 2020s, the dominant model was the export of raw ore. However, following Zimbabwe's ban on export of unprocessed lithium, the sector has pivoted toward domestic beneficiation. At the Arcadia Lithium project, a massive processing plant with a capacity of 4.5 million tons per annum was commissioned in 2023. This facility utilizes dense media separation, DMS, and flotation circuits to upgrade the run-of-mine ore, which typically grades around 1% lithium oxide, into a spodumene concentrate grading between 5.5 and 6%. This upgrading process involves crushing the rock to liberate the lithium minerals, then using heavy liquids or froth flotation to separate the valuable spodumene from quartz and feldspar gangue. The result is a substantial reduction in the mass of material that needs to be transported, effectively increasing the value density of the export product. Bikita Minerals has similarly expanded its industrial footprint, constructing new gravity separation and flotation plants to process its increasing output. The mine now operates separate circuits for petalite and spodumene, allowing it to optimize recovery for each mineral stream. The production of spodumene concentrate has become the primary economic driver, with capacity ramped up to meet the demands of the battery supply chain. Despite these advances in concentration capacity, a significant midstream gap remains in the African lithium sector. The production of battery-grade chemicals, specifically lithium carbonate and lithium hydroxide, remains limited. The conversion of spodumene concentrate into these chemicals is an energy-intensive chemical engineering process involving roasting the concentrate at temperatures exceeding 1,000 degrees Celsius to convert the spodumene from its alpha to beta phase, followed by acid roasting and leaching. This process consumes large quantities of sulfuric acid, soda ash, and electricity. Zimbabwe has expressed strong ambitions to establish a lithium carbonate plant, but technical bottlenecks such as reliable electric supply and the cost of importing chemical reagents remain significant hurdles. Litico's Karibib project in Namibia is pioneering an alternative processing model. Rather than the standard roasting route used for spodumene, Litico employs a proprietary hydrometallurgical process known as LMAX to treat lepidolite. This process uses sulfuric acid leaching at atmospheric pressure to extract lithium, followed by a series of purification steps to produce lithium hydroxide. However, the commercial-scale chemical plant for this project is being developed in Abu Dhabi rather than Namibia, highlighting the continued trend of offshoring the most complex and energy-intensive chemical engineering steps to jurisdictions with established chemical industrial parks and lower energy costs. Global market position. Africa has rapidly consolidated its position as a swing producer in the global lithium market. By 2025, Production ramp-ups in Zimbabwe, Mali, and the DRC have significantly altered the global supply balance. Zimbabwe has solidified its status as a top-tier global producer, with the potential to supply over 10% of global lithium demand by the late 2020s. The market for African lithium is heavily oriented towards China. The vast majority of African lithium projects are deeply integrated with Chinese supply chains through equity ownership or long-term offtake agreements. Major Chinese battery materials companies, including Zhejiang Huayu Cobalt, Sinomine Resource Group, and Changshin Lithium, have acquired significant assets in Zimbabwe and mining interests across the continent. This dominance has sparked strategic responses from Western nations, leading to initiatives like the Mineral Security Partnership. Yet the commercial reality in 2025 remains that African lithium feedstocks are primarily tuned to feed Chinese converters. Logistics and transport. The logistics of exporting bulk lithium concentrates present a distinct challenge compared to high-value metals like gold or platinum. A mine producing 300,000 tons of spodumene concentrate per year requires a robust and reliable heavy-haul logistics network. In Zimbabwe, lithium exporters relied heavily on road transport corridors. The primary route runs south to the port of Durban in South Africa, a journey of over 1,600 kilometers. This route, while well established, suffers from severe congestion at the Beitbridge border crossing and periodic delays at the Durban port terminal due to equipment failures and weather disruptions. An alternative route runs east to the port of Beira in Mozambique. Beira offers a significantly shorter distance for Zimbabwean mines, but has historically struggled with channel draft limitations that restrict the size of vessels that can dock. However, ongoing dredging and terminal improvements are gradually increasing its viability for bulk mineral exports. For the Manano project in the DRC, logistics are the primary constraint. The deposit is located in a remote interior region, hundreds of kilometers from any functional railhead. The rehabilitation of the Lobito Corridor, a railway line connecting the DRC copper belt to the Atlantic port of Lobito in Angola, is a critical development for unlocking this resource. By 2025, financing from Western consortia and the African Development Bank has accelerated the refurbishment of this line. Once fully operational for bulk minerals, the Lobito Corridor will provide a direct westward outlet for DRC lithium, bypassing the congested southern routes and reducing transit times to European and American markets by weeks. In West Africa, logistics are defined by road transport to coastal ports. Mali's Goulamina project relies on trucking concentrate to the ports of Abidjan in Côte d'Ivoire or Dakar in Senegal. This reliance on cross-border trucking exposes operations to regional instability and the risk of border closures, a factor that mining companies mitigate by maintaining large stockpiles at port facilities to ensure continuity of supply. Cobalt, the strategic heavyweight. Cobalt remains the most geologically concentrated and geopolitically sensitive mineral in the battery supply chain. The Democratic Republic of the Congo is not merely a leader, but the undisputed hegemon of global cobalt supply, accounting for over 70% of world production. The years 2024 and 2025 have seen the DRC attempt to leverage this dominance to capture higher value, even as global battery chemistries evolve. The cobalt endowments of the Central African Copper Belt are hosted in sediment-hosted stratiform copper-cobalt deposits. These formations are distinct from the nickel-cobalt laterites found in Indonesia or the Philippines. In the DRC, cobalt occurs as a primary byproduct of copper mining, hosted within the Rowan Group sediments of the Katanga supergroup. The scale of these deposits is staggering. The Tenke Fungarumi mine sits on one of the world's largest high-grade copper-cobalt deposits, where mineralization is continuous over strike lengths of tens of kilometers. The ore is typically oxide in the upper zones, characterized by minerals like malachite and heterogenite, transitioning to sulfides like chalcopyrite and kerallite at depth. The average cobalt grades in the DRC often exceed 0.3 to 0.5%, vastly superior to the 0.05% grades typical of nickel laterite projects elsewhere. The Komodo Copper Company operations exploit similar geology west of Kolwezi. The deposits here are characterized by multiple stacked ore horizons. The geological continuity allows for massive industrial-scale mining, utilizing some of the largest excavators and truck fleets in the world. Furthermore, the geology of the region includes high-grade surface expressions of heterogenite, which are often exploited by artisanal miners. While this report focuses on industrial production, the geological accessibility of high-grade ore at the surface is a unique feature of the Congolese copper belt that influences the overall supply landscape. Processing capacity and refining bottlenecks. The standard processing product from the DRC is crude cobalt hydroxide, an intermediate product containing roughly 30 to 40% cobalt. This material is almost exclusively exported to China for refining into cobalt sulfate for batteries or cobalt metal. Technical bottlenecks in 2025 have centered on the availability of chemical reagents. The processing of oxide ores via acid leaching requires vast quantities of sulfuric acid. The region is structurally short of acid, necessitating imports from Zambia or the construction of sulfur-burning plants on site. Disruptions in the supply of sulfur or acid have periodically throttled capacity utilization at major hydrometallurgical plants. A major shift in the 2024-2025 period has been the expansion of refining capacity within the DRC. CMOC Group, operating Tenke Fungurume, expanded its production lines to process mixed ores, significantly boosting hydroxide output. However, the production of battery-grade cobalt sulfate within the DRC remains minimal. The technical challenge involves not just the chemical separation process, but the crystallization and purification steps, which require high-purity reagents and highly reliable power supply, both of which are expensive or inconsistent in the Katanga region. Consequently, despite the push for value addition, the industrial reality is that processing largely stops at the hydroxide stage within Africa. Global market position. The DRC's market position is a paradox of dominance and vulnerability. While it controls the upstream supply, the midstream refining market is controlled by China. In 2025, market dynamics were further complicated by the rise of lithium iron phosphate batteries, which do not require cobalt. This structural shift in electric vehicle battery preferences has softened long-term demand forecasts for cobalt, placing pressure on prices. Despite this shift, cobalt remains essential for high-performance nickel-manganese cobalt batteries used for long-range vehicles and aerospace applications. The DRC producers, primarily Glencore and CMOC, act as the price setters for the global market. In 2024 and 2025, strategic stockpiling by the DRC government and discussions regarding export quotas were used as tools to manage supply and support pricing during periods of market surplus. Logistics and transport. Cobalt logistics are synonymous with the challenges of the copper belt. The primary export route has historically been the North-South Corridor, an arduous journey by truck from Kolwezi to Ndola in Zambia, then south through Zimbabwe to the port of Durban. This route, while notoriously inefficient, with border queues at Kasumbalesa between the DRC and Zambia, often stretching for kilometers and lasting days, the revitalization of the Lobito corridor is the most significant logistical development for the cobalt sector. The rail line offers a direct, secure, and faster route to the Atlantic Ocean. For cobalt, which is a high-value commodity relative to its volume compared to copper, the reduction in working capital tied up in transit is a massive financial incentive, By 2026, significant volumes of cobalt hydroxide are targeted to move via Lobito, diversifying risk away from the South African corridor and tightening the integration with Atlantic markets. Manganese, the steel titan and the battery pivot. Manganese is often overshadowed by lithium and cobalt, yet it is essential for both the steel industry, which consumes 90% of supply, and increasingly for the battery sector. Africa's dominance in manganese is absolute, with South Africa and Gabon controlling the majority of high-grade global reserves. South Africa's Kalahari manganese field in the Northern Cape province is the largest land-based manganese deposit on Earth, containing approximately 77% of the world's proven manganese reserves. The geology consists of 3 continuous manganese-rich layers hosted in banded iron formations, buried under younger cover rocks. The ore is high-grade, typically ranging from 36 to 48% manganese, and extends over a vast basin. Mines such as Mamatwan and Chwaning utilize both open-cut and underground methods to extract this consistent ore body. The Mamatwan-type ore is a semi-carbonate ore, while the Wessels-type ore found at Nchwaning is higher grade and has different metallurgical properties. In Gabon, the Mwanda deposit is a supergene enrichment deposit. Weathering of the underlying rock has concentrated manganese oxides near the surface, creating high-grade ore ranging from 45 to 50% manganese and extends over a vast basin. Mines such as Mwanda utilize relatively simple earth-moving techniques, involving the removal of shallow overburden. This geological characteristic makes Gabonese manganese some of the lowest cost production in the world. Processing capacity and energy constraints. Historically, African manganese was exported almost entirely as raw ore. This model is changing due to energy economics and policy pressure. In South Africa, the smelting of manganese ore into ferromanganese requires immense amounts of electricity. The crisis at Eskom, the state power utility, and rising electricity tariffs have forced a decline in domestic smelting capacity, with several furnaces shutting down or operating at reduced rates. Consequently, South Africa remains primarily an ore exporter, despite holding the reserves to be a global alloy superpower. In Gabon, the dynamic is different. Aramet, the operator of Comilog, has commissioned the Mwanda Metallurgical Complex to produce silico-manganese locally. Furthermore, there is a strategic push to enter the battery market. High-purity manganese sulfate monohydrate, HPMSM, is the chemical required for NMC batteries. Gabon is positioning itself to host HPMSM plants, leveraging its abundant hydropower to process ore into battery chemicals with a lower carbon footprint. Aramet's launch of low-carbon manganese brands in 2025 highlights this strategy of using green energy processing as a market differentiator. Global market position. South Africa and Gabon combined account for over half of global manganese production. In the steel sector, they are the indispensable suppliers to China's steel mills. Any disruption in South African rail logistics sends immediate price shocks through the global steel industry. In the battery sector, African manganese is gaining prominence as a conflict-free and lower-cost alternative to cobalt. As battery chemistries shift towards high manganese cathodes, such as lithium manganese nickel oxide, or LMNO, or lithium manganese iron phosphate, LMFP, the demand for high-purity African ore is projected to surge. The challenge lies in the battery-grade specification. Only specific types of carbonate ores are ideal for low-cost conversion to sulfates, giving the Kalahari manganese field a distinct geological advantage due to its carbonate-rich mineralogy. Logistics and transport. For South African manganese, logistics is the single defining constraint. The mines are located 1,000 kilometers inland from the coast. They rely on Transnet's heavy-haul rail lines to reach the ports of Port Elizabeth, Ngura, and Saldanha. In 2024 and 2025, rail capacity was severely hampered by cable theft, locomotive shortages, and maintenance backlogs. This forced miners to resort to road transport, putting hundreds of heavy trucks on the road to Durban, which damages infrastructure and significantly raises logistics costs. The Manganese Export Capacity Allocation, or MECA strategy, aims to expand rail capacity, but execution has lagged behind the potential production volume of the mines. In Gabon, the Trans-Gabonese Railway, or CETRAG, is the lifeline. It connects the Mwanda mine in the interior to the port of Owendo near Libreville. Recent derailments highlighted the vulnerability of this single-track line. However, a massive renovation program funded by Aramet and the Gabonese government has stabilized the line, and capacity is being expanded to accommodate volumes reaching toward 10 million tons per annum. Graphite, the East African anode hub. Graphite is the primary material for the anode of lithium-ion batteries. While China has historically dominated both mining and processing, East Africa, specifically Mozambique, Madagascar, and Tanzania, has emerged as the premier alternative source of natural flake graphite. The graphite deposits of East Africa are high-grade metamorphic deposits. They are formed in high-temperature geological terrains where organic carbon in ancient sediments was crystallized into large graphite flakes. Mozambique's Balama deposit in Cabo Delgado is the world's largest graphite deposit. The geology is exceptional not just for its size, with over 110 million tons of reserves, but for the proportion of jumbo and large flakes, which command a premium price. The graphitic carbon grade averages around 16%, which is very high by global standards. Madagascar hosts soft, weathered graphite. The ore is often saprolitic, meaning it is clay-like due to extensive weathering. This makes mining and crushing incredibly cheap and easy compared to hard rock deposits. The Molo Graphite project utilizes this advantage, employing a modular processing plant that sits atop a vast, flat-lying deposit. Tanzania's deposits, such as those at Lindi Jumbo and Ipanko, are renowned for their high purity and large flake distribution. The geological history of the Mozambique Belt, which runs through Tanzania, has created graphitic gneisses that liberate easily, preserving the flake size during processing, a critical factor for profitability. Processing capacity and spheronization. Graphite processing involves crushing, grinding, and flotation to produce a concentrate of 94 to 97% graphitic carbon. The technical bottleneck lies in the next step, purification to 99.95% and shaping the flakes into spheres for battery anodes, a process known as spheronization. Currently, most African graphite is exported as concentrate to China for purification. The purification process traditionally involves hydrofluoric acid, which has severe environmental risks and requires complex handling. However, projects in Tanzania and Mozambique are exploring thermal purification or cleaner chemical leaching to establish anode precursor plants in Africa. In 2025, Syra Resources at Balama continued to feed its active anode material plant in the USA, but the strategic goal across the region is to bring the spheronization capability closer to the mine site, utilizing regional hydropower or natural gas to power the energy-intensive mills. Global market position. Mozambique is the world's most significant graphite producer outside of China. The Balama mine alone has the capacity to supply a substantial fraction of the global electric vehicle market. However, the market in 2024 and 2025 was volatile. China, controlling the anode market, exercises significant pricing power. When Chinese production is high, African mines often struggle to compete on cost. Conversely, the implementation of the U.S. Inflation Reduction Act and the European Union's Critical Raw Materials Act have created a premium market for non-Chinese graphite. This geopolitical bifurcation benefits East African producers, who are increasingly integrating into Korean, Japanese, and American supply chains. Logistics and transport. The security situation in northern Mozambique has been a major logistical risk for the Balama mine. While the mine site has robust security, the transport route to the port of Pemba and Nacala requires strict security protocols due to regional instability. The Nacala corridor is the preferred export route for the region, offering a deep water port capable of handling large volumes. In Tanzania, logistics are improving with the government's investment in the standard gauge railway and upgrades to the port of Mtwara. For the southern projects like Lindi Jumbo, Mtwara is the natural gateway. The relatively short distance from mine to port in Tanzania and Mozambique, compared to the interior of the DRC or Zambia, is a structural cost advantage for the graphite sector. Platinum group metals, the sovereign reserve. South Africa's control over platinum group metals, platinum, palladium, rhodium, ruthenium, iridium, and osmium, is without parallel in the natural resource world. It holds over 90% of global reserves. Zimbabwe holds the second largest reserves, consolidating Southern Africa's grip on this strategic metal suite. The Bushveld complex in South Africa is a unique geological phenomenon, a massive layered igneous intrusion. PGM mining focuses on three distinct reefs. The Merensky Reef has historically been the main source, rich in platinum and base metals like nickel and copper. It is narrower and deeper, becoming costlier to mine as operations extend further underground. The UG2 reef is a chromatite layer that sits below the Merensky. It is rich in PGMs, but contains high levels of chromite, which requires specialized smelting technology. It has become the dominant source of production as Merensky reserves deplete. The Platte Reef, located on the northern limb of the complex, is a much thicker, lower-grade zone that is amenable to massive mechanized mining, including open-pit methods, unlike the narrow tabular mining required for the other reefs. The Great Dyke in Zimbabwe is a linear geological feature running north-south through the country. It hosts the main sulfide zone, or MSZ, which is geologically similar to the Merensky Reef, but generally shallower and easier to access, though slightly lower grade in some sections. Processing capacity and smelting challenges. The PGM processing chain is technologically mature but highly energy-intensive. It involves concentration, smelting to produce matte, base metal refining to remove nickel and copper, and precious metal refining to separate the individual PGMs. South Africa possesses full value chain capability, refining metal to 99.99% purity. However, the smelting phase is a major electricity consumer. The instability of the South African electricity grid in 2024 and 2025 forced smelters to run at lower capacities, creating a backlog of unprocessed concentrate. In Zimbabwe, the government has aggressively pushed for beneficiation. Historically, Zimbabwean concentrate was sent to South Africa for smelting. By 2025, largely due to export tax threats on raw concentrate, major producers like Zimplats have expanded domestic smelting capacity. Zimbabwe is now producing PGM matte domestically, with the next target being the establishment of a base metal refinery to separate the nickel and copper sulfates within the country. Global market position. The PGM market is in transition. The decline of the internal combustion engine threatens the demand for catalytic converters, which is the primary use of platinum and palladium. However, the rise of the hydrogen economy offers a lifeline. Platinum and iridium are critical for proton exchange membrane electrolyzers, used for green hydrogen production and for fuel cells. South Africa's market dominance gives it significant leverage, but the high cost of deep-level mining, some shafts exceed 2 kilometers in depth, makes the industry vulnerable to price dips. The shift is towards mechanized mining, such as the Platreef projects, which can operate at lower costs. Russia is the only other significant competitor, primarily in palladium, but geopolitical sanctions have made South African supply even more critical to Western markets. Logistics and transport. PGM logistics are low volume but high security. The final product, refined metal bars or sponge, is transported by air or secure armored convoy. The primary constraint is not rail or port capacity for the final product, but the supply of consumables to the mines, such as diesel, reagents, and timber, and the reliability of energy for the smelters. However, the export of base metals produced as byproducts does require rail and road logistics. The decay of South African rail infrastructure has forced more of these bulk byproducts onto the road network to Durban and Mozambique, increasing costs and logistical friction. Infrastructure and logistics, the corridor wars. The analysis of individual minerals reveals a recurring theme: the battle to overcome logistical bottlenecks. 2 major corridors define the 2025-2026 strategic map. The Lobito Corridor, backed by the United States and European Union under the Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment, is the strategic answer to China's dominance. It connects the copper-cobalt belts of the DRC and Zambia to the Angolan port of Lobito. Targeting a capacity of 1 million tons per annum by 2030, it offers the fastest sailing time to Atlantic markets. By 2025, rail rehabilitation is advanced, and trial shipments of copper and cobalt have commenced, positioning it as the preferred route for minerals destined for Western gigafactories. Conversely, the Tazara Railway and Beira corridors orient African minerals towards Asia. The Tazara Railway, connecting Zambia to the port of Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, became the focus of a massive revitalization deal with China in 2025. China's interest is to secure a reliable eastern exit for the minerals mined by its state-owned enterprises in the Copper Belt. Meanwhile, the Beira corridor remains the lifeline for Zimbabwe's lithium exports, despite the need for constant dredging at the port. The port of Maputo has also seen record volumes in 2025, effectively absorbing the overflow of bulk minerals that South Africa could not export via its own ports due to rail failures. Analysis of Africa's hydrocarbon exploration, production, and energy infrastructure ecosystem. The global energy landscape is currently undergoing a profound structural transformation, frequently described by energy economists as a shift from a system based purely on molecules to one increasingly powered by electrons. Capital is flowing toward low-carbon technologies at a pace never before witnessed in modern industrial history, marking a critical turning point in global energy finance. Yet, despite the rapid acceleration of renewable energy capacity additions globally, the necessity for reliable, high-yield fossil fuels remains deeply entrenched within the international economy. Analytical models mapping the next 2 decades of global energy consumption indicate that while oil demand may peak by the early 2030s and natural gas growth may eventually decelerate, neither fuel is projected to experience a sudden or sharp contraction. Instead, the world is entering a prolonged hybrid energy era, one where maintaining the security of the global hydrocarbon supply is just as critical as expanding electrical grids. Within this complex global paradigm, the African continent occupies a uniquely strategic position. Africa is currently the stage for an extraordinary geological and commercial renaissance, simultaneously leveraging massive, established onshore energy fields while rapidly unlocking some of the most technologically challenging deep-water frontiers ever explored. The contrast is stark and fascinating. In the north and the west, nations that have been the backbone of the global petroleum trade for over half a century are modernizing their aging infrastructure to extract every remaining drop of value from their mature basins. Conversely, in the south and the east, nations that historically possessed no domestic oil or gas production are suddenly finding themselves at the epicenter of multi-billion-barrel discoveries, poised to become the petrostates of the 21st century. This second part provides an exhaustive, detailed analysis of the current state of hydrocarbon exploration and production across the African continent. Designed for a general audience seeking a deep, nuanced understanding of global energy mechanics, this analysis deliberately avoids relying on simple lists or charts. Instead, it weaves together the raw numerical data of resource estimation, the staggering engineering specifications of transcontinental pipelines and refineries, the ancient geological history that created these fuels millions of years ago, and the massive financial investments that will dictate how much energy Africa produces over the next decade. Crude oil reserves. To understand the future of African energy, one must first quantify the resources currently confirmed to exist beneath its soil and sea. In the petroleum industry, the term proven reserves refers to the estimated quantities of oil and natural gas that geological and engineering data demonstrate can be extracted in the future with reasonable certainty under existing economic and operating conditions. The aggregation of these proven reserves reveals a continent of deep geographical contrasts, split between an established old guard of major producers and a rising coalition of emerging energy frontiers. When assessing proven crude oil reserves for the year 2025, the established members of the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OPEC, continue to absolutely dominate the African landscape. Libya retains the preeminent position on the continent, possessing an astonishing volume of proven crude oil reserves estimated at 48.36 billion barrels. To put this staggering number into perspective, it secures Libya's position as the 9th largest reserve holder on the entire planet, capturing approximately 2.74% of the world's total share of crude oil. The vast majority of this petroleum wealth is locked within the Sirte Basin, a massive geological depression in the country's interior that has been producing high-quality, easily refined light crude oil for decades. Despite a complex operational environment heavily influenced by above-ground political variables, the sheer scale of Libya's geological endowment ensures it remains an irreplaceable pillar of the global energy market. Nigeria follows as the second-largest crude oil reserve holder on the African continent. Recent aggregate data for 2025 places Nigeria's proven oil reserves between 36.89 billion and 37.5 billion barrels. Representing roughly 2.12% of the global share, Nigeria's reserves are heavily concentrated within the famously prolific Niger Delta region. Unlike Libya's primarily onshore desert fields, Nigeria's hydrocarbon wealth spans a diverse array of environments, ranging from dense coastal swamps to expansive shallow water platforms, and increasingly stretching far out into the deep water blocks of the Gulf of Guinea. Further north, Algeria commands a formidable 12.2 billion barrels of proven crude oil reserves. Algeria's reserves are predominantly situated deep within the Saharan desert, making the nation a critical and reliable energy supplier to the Mediterranean and the broader European market. Rounding out the quartet of Africa's traditional hydrocarbon heavyweights is Angola, which holds approximately 7.78 billion barrels of proven oil reserves. Angola's production profile is almost entirely offshore, with its massive reserves predominantly located deep beneath the Atlantic Ocean within the lower Congo and Kwanza basins. Extracting oil from these Angolan depths requires highly advanced, multi-billion-dollar floating platforms, highlighting the technological prowess required to harvest West Africa's marine resources. In stark contrast to these mature, legacy producers, the emerging markets of the southern Atlantic margin are currently rewriting the global energy map through a series of unprecedented discoveries. Namibia, a country that historically imported all of its petroleum products and had never produced a commercial drop of crude oil, has suddenly become the hottest exploration zip code on Earth. While total aggregate reserve certifications for Namibia are still undergoing complex appraisal drilling, discoveries made since 2022 in the deepwater Orange Basin have uncovered an estimated 3.6 billion barrels of oil equivalent. The Mopane discovery alone, struck by Galp Energia in early 2024, is currently estimated to hold a breathtaking 2.4 billion barrels of recoverable oil resources. If this volume is fully verified through further testing, the Mopane field would rank as the largest single hydrocarbon discovery ever made in sub-Saharan Africa, and the third largest global oil discovery of the entire past decade. Senegal is experiencing a similar world-altering petroleum awakening. Long considered a frontier market with negligible energy prospects, Senegal has transitioned into a recognized hydrocarbon province following massive discoveries in its deep offshore waters. The country's estimated oil resources now exceed 1 billion barrels, spread over numerous distinct geological fields. The Sangomar oil field, the crown jewel of Senegal's crude portfolio, is projected to yield up to 500 million barrels of oil over its operational lifespan. For a nation of Senegal's economic size, unlocking 500 million barrels of domestic crude oil represents a transformative generational shift, providing the foundational capital required to drive aggressive national industrialization. Natural gas reserves. The distribution of natural gas reserves across Africa further illustrates the continent's dual narrative of established dominance and rapid frontier expansion. Natural gas is widely considered the ultimate transition fuel for the 21st century. It burns significantly cleaner than coal or heavy fuel oil, making it an essential bridge energy source as the global economy slowly attempts to decarbonize. Consequently, nations holding vast natural gas reserves are finding themselves in positions of immense geopolitical leverage. Nigeria remains the undisputed leader in natural gas wealth on the continent, holding a colossal 210 trillion cubic feet of proven reserves. Historically, much of Nigeria's natural gas was categorized as associated gas, meaning it was found mixed within crude oil reservoirs and was often treated as a nuisance byproduct. For decades, it was simply flared or burned off into the atmosphere so that oil companies could get to the more lucrative crude. Today, however, shifting global demands and strict environmental regulations are aggressively incentivizing the capture and commercialization of this gas to meet both domestic power generation needs and insatiable international demand. Algeria continues to function as the vital natural gas artery connecting Africa to Europe. While its precise reserve figures are often aggregated alongside diverse regional assessments, it consistently ranks among the very top global producers, leveraging its massive Saharan gas fields to feed an intricate network of trans-Mediterranean pipelines. Angola possesses an estimated 10.6 trillion cubic feet of proven natural gas reserves, though much like Nigeria, it has historically flared significant volumes or re-injected the gas back into the earth to maintain pressure in its aging crude oil reservoirs. However, efforts to commercialize Angolan gas are rapidly accelerating, particularly with the development of the country's very first non-associated natural gas projects, which are designed specifically to harvest dry gas from the offshore Quiluma and Mabuequiero fields, rather than treating it as an oil byproduct. Yet the most profound and globally significant shift in the natural gas paradigm is currently unfolding in Mozambique. The deepwater Rovuma Basin, located off the northern coast of the country, has catapulted Mozambique from relative obscurity to the position of the third largest holder of proven natural gas reserves in Africa, with highly confident estimates reaching 100 trillion cubic feet. Furthermore, broader geological assessments by the United States Geological Survey, covering the entire coastal province, suggest that the ultimate volume of undiscovered, technically recoverable gas could eventually exceed a mind-boggling 182 trillion cubic feet. This volume of gas is so immense that it has the capacity to permanently alter the energy geopolitics of the entire Indian Ocean corridor, positioning Mozambique as a primary supplier to the energy-hungry markets of South Asia and the Far East. On the opposite side of the continent, Senegal and Mauritania are mirroring this gas-driven transformation along the Atlantic coast. The Greater Tortue Amayim project, a massive development straddling the maritime border between the two nations, is tapping into an offshore basin that holds an estimated 15 trillion cubic feet of recoverable gas resource potential. More speculative exploration models suggest that the broader basin shared by Senegal and Mauritania could eventually reveal up to 100 trillion cubic feet of undiscovered gas potential. Namibia, while currently dominating global headlines for its recent light crude oil discoveries, also holds highly substantial legacy gas reserves. This includes between 1.3 and 2.2 trillion cubic feet contained within the Kudu gas field, a discovery made in the 1970s that remained stranded for decades due to a lack of local markets, alongside massive new volumes of associated gas found mixed within the recent Orange Basin crude discoveries. Infrastructure analysis, transcontinental pipelines. Identifying massive volumes of oil and gas deep beneath the Earth's surface is only the first step in the energy value chain. The actual commercialization of these hydrocarbons relies entirely on the deployment of highly complex, incredibly capital-intensive infrastructure. The engineering and construction of transnational pipeline networks, the modernization of sprawling downstream refining complexes, and the fabrication of ultra-deep-water liquefaction terminals represent some of the most ambitious and challenging engineering feats currently being undertaken anywhere on the globe. This infrastructure is not only being built to facilitate the export of energy to Europe and Asia, but is increasingly designed to fulfill domestic market obligations, ensuring that African resources are used to power African industrialization. The physical transportation of raw hydrocarbons across the vast, unforgiving terrain of the African continent requires transcontinental pipeline systems of monumental scale. The development of these pipelines demonstrates how strategic diplomatic alignment between neighboring nations directly impacts the viability of massive engineering corridors. The Trans-Saharan gas pipeline stands as one of the most technically and geopolitically ambitious energy projects ever conceived. Designed to transport a staggering 30 billion cubic meters of natural gas annually, the pipeline will span an immense length of 4,128 kilometers. The route originates deep within the gas-rich swamps of the Nigerian Delta, traverses directly through the harsh, arid Sahelian interior of Niger, and ultimately terminates at Algeria's advanced Mediterranean export hubs. The engineering specifications required to build the Trans-Saharan gas pipeline are daunting. The physical pipeline itself requires massive diameter sizing, ranging between 48 and 60 inches wide, constructed from high-strength API 5L X60 grade steel to safely contain the immense internal pressures of the flowing gas. Because natural gas loses pressure as it travels over thousands of kilometers due to internal friction against the steel pipe walls, engineers must design and install massive compressor stations every 150 to 200 kilometers along the route. These compressor stations act as the mechanical heartbeats of the pipeline network, forcefully pushing the natural gas forward to ensure it reaches its destination without stalling. Furthermore, the pipeline must be engineered to withstand severe environmental extremities. The Saharan desert exposes the steel and its protective anti-corrosion coatings to blistering daytime temperatures exceeding 50 degrees Celsius, followed by rapid nocturnal cooling that can drop below freezing during the winter months. Following crucial diplomatic recalibrations between the participating nations in early 2026, the project has seen accelerated construction progress. The 1,037-kilometer Nigerian segment and the 2,310-kilometer Algerian segment are both estimated to be roughly 70% complete, heavily utilizing existing domestic right-of-ways, while the 841-kilometer middle segment through Niger currently advances through its final planning and environmental assessment phases. Equally significant in its sheer engineering complexity is the East African Crude Oil Pipeline, widely known by its acronym EACOP. Stretching 1,443 kilometers from the Kabale pumping station in the landlocked Albertine Graben region of Uganda to the Chongo-Liani Marine Storage Terminal on the Tanzanian coast, EACOP is specifically designed to transport 216,000 barrels per day of a highly unique type of crude oil. The oil discovered in Uganda is extremely viscous and waxy. It has a very high pour point and wax appearance temperature, meaning at normal environmental temperatures, the crude oil resembles thick shoe polish or solid candle wax rather than a flowing liquid. Therefore, pumping it across the continent presents a massive thermal engineering challenge. To solve this, the East African Crude Oil Pipeline is designed to act as a gigantic 1,443-kilometer-long thermos. The 24-inch diameter carbon steel pipeline is equipped with an unprecedented continuous electrical heat tracing system spanning its entire length. 3 high-voltage electrical power cables are run parallel to the pipeline in a dedicated trench, feeding electricity to heat tracing cables that run directly against the steel pipe. To trap this heat, the entire pipe is thermally insulated with a thick 70 to 80 millimeter layer of specialized polyurethane foam, which is then protected from the outside soil and moisture by a high-density polyethylene covering and a fusion-bonded epoxy anti-corrosion coating. This massive heating system guarantees that the internal temperature of the pipeline never drops below 50 degrees Celsius, ensuring the waxy crude remains in a warm, liquid state as it travels toward the ocean. The hydraulic propulsion pushing this heavy oil is managed by 6 self-contained, highly advanced pumping stations distributed along the route. In a brilliant feat of self-sustaining engineering designed for remote environments lacking reliable electrical grids, several of these pumping stations are designed to utilize the very crude oil they are transporting as the primary fuel for their massive internal generator sets. These stations possess installed power capacities ranging between 22 and 27 megawatts, providing enough electricity to both pump the oil and run the continuous electrical heat tracing system. Downstream refineries, the push for domestic processing. While pipelines transport raw, unrefined resources to the coast for global export, the downstream refining sector in Africa is undergoing a historical transformation aimed at reversing decades of reliance on imported fuels. Despite being a massive producer of crude oil, Africa has historically lacked the complex industrial capacity to process that oil into usable products like gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel, forcing nations to spend billions importing the very resources they exported in raw form. The undisputed vanguard of this movement toward domestic processing is the Dangote refinery in Nigeria. Constructed on reclaimed swampland in the Lekki Free Trade Zone, a site preparation requiring millions of tons of sand filling and the construction of a dedicated marine jetty just to receive the colossal manufacturing equipment, this facility represents a staggering industrial achievement. The Dangote Refinery is the largest single-train refinery in the world, boasting an awe-inspiring nameplate capacity of 650,000 barrels of crude oil per day. The technological heart of the Dangote complex heavily relies on its residual fluid catalytic cracking unit, commonly referred to as an RFCC. When crude oil is boiled and distilled, it separates into different fractions. The lightest parts become gases, the middle parts become gasoline and kerosene, but the heaviest sludgy remnants are left at the bottom. The RFCC is a massive industrial reactor designed to take this heavy, low-value residual sludge and literally crack its large hydrocarbon molecules apart into smaller, high-value products like gasoline and diesel. It achieves this by mixing the heavy oil with a specialized catalyst powder and subjecting it to extreme reactor temperatures ranging between 650 and 700 degrees Celsius. The catalyst must continuously circulate through the system to maintain the intense heat balance required for the chemical reactions. While the Dangote refinery successfully commenced production of diesel and aviation fuels and initiated gasoline production in late 2024, unexpected mechanical and integration complexities related to the performance testing of the highly sensitive RFCC unit have slightly delayed its trajectory. Full operational capacity across all product lines is now anticipated by early 2026, which will definitively end Nigeria's reliance on European gasoline imports. Angola is executing a similarly robust downstream strategy to mitigate its own refined product import dependency. The centerpiece of Angola's initiative is the planned Lobito oil refinery. Once fully commissioned, this greenfield project is slated to process 200,000 barrels of crude oil per day. The front-end engineering design, essentially the highly detailed technical blueprint for the refinery, was completed by the engineering firm KBR. The KBR design integrates advanced sustainable technology solutions specifically engineered to meet strict 2030 African and European product emission specifications, ensuring the fuels produced burn as cleanly as possible. A notable technological innovation within the Lobito design is a highly optimized cooling system that effectively reduces the refinery's consumption of local river water as well as its wastewater treatment requirements by an impressive 30%. When combined with the ongoing development of the Cabinda refinery, the Lobito facility represents a structural pivot toward Angolan energy independence. Furthermore, localized modular refining capacities are rapidly expanding across the continent to serve regional markets. In Ghana, the Sentuo oil refinery recently commenced operations. Designed as a multi-train facility with a total capacity of 120,000 barrels per day, the Sentuo plant is currently operating its first phase output at a stable 40,000 barrels per day. In Central Africa, Gabon is actively engaged in multi-phase modernizations at its legacy Port Gentil refining facility. This includes upgrading the refinery's associated power plant from 30 megawatts up to 50 megawatts, providing the necessary electricity to facilitate an eventual tripling of Gabon's downstream fuel production throughput by the year 2030. Liquefied natural gas terminals, supercooling the future. Because natural gas is a vapor, it cannot be simply poured into a tanker ship like crude oil. To transport gas across the oceans, it must be chilled to extreme cryogenic temperatures, specifically minus 162 degrees Celsius. At this temperature, the gas condenses into a liquid, shrinking its physical volume by roughly 600 times. This liquefied natural gas, or LNG, can then be pumped into specialized insulated carrier ships. Africa's role as a primary global supplier of LNG is being solidified through the massive expansion of traditional onshore terminals, as well as the deployment of futuristic, ultra-deep-water floating LNG vessels. In Nigeria, the Nigeria LNG Train 7 project, located on Bonny Island, represents a massive expansion of an already world-class facility. By adding a complete seventh LNG processing train, the industry term for a liquefaction unit, alongside additional supporting infrastructure, the Train 7 project will increase the facility's total production capacity by a massive 35%, elevating it from 22 million tons per annum up to an aggregate 30 million tons per annum. The project utilizes proprietary APC3MR process technology designed by Air Products, which involves running the natural gas through massive cryogenic coil-wound heat exchangers to instantly freeze the vapor into liquid. To handle this increased volume, the project also requires the construction of an 84,200 cubic meter insulated LNG storage tank and a 36,000 cubic meter condensate storage tank. While onshore facilities like Bonny Island have dominated the industry for decades, the frontier offshore basins are increasingly turning to floating liquefied natural gas, or FLNG technology. FLNG vessels are essentially massive, self-contained liquefaction factories built on top of a ship's hull. This technology allows operators to park the factory directly above the deepwater gas field, completely bypassing the immense capital costs, environmental disruption, and security risks associated with building hundreds of kilometers of subsea pipelines to an onshore facility. The Coral Sul FLNG vessel, permanently stationed in Mozambique's Area 4 of the Rovuma Basin, represents an absolute marvel of modern marine engineering. It is the first FLNG facility ever deployed in ultra-deep water, anchored to the seafloor at a depth of approximately 2,000 meters. Because a ship of this size cannot drop a standard anchor, it utilizes a highly complex internal turret mooring system designed by the engineering firm Sofec. The turret is a massive cylinder built through the hull of the ship that is anchored to the ocean floor using 20 massive mooring lines weighing a combined 9,000 tons. The ship itself can freely rotate or weather vane around this fixed turret, allowing it to constantly point its bow into the prevailing wind and ocean currents without ever twisting the delicate gas pipes rising from the seafloor, ensuring production is never interrupted by bad weather. Measuring 432 meters in length, longer than 4 football fields, and weighing roughly 220,000 tons, the Coral Sul is equipped with an 8-story living quarters for 350 personnel and a gas liquefaction capacity of 3.4 million tons per annum, drawing directly from the giant Coral Reservoir via 6 subsea wells. Similarly, the Greater Tortue Ahmeyim Phase 1 project off the coast of Senegal and Mauritania relies on a complex, multi-stage offshore architecture to conquer its remote location. The project extracts raw natural gas from ultra-deepwater subsea wells located an astounding 2,850 meters below the ocean surface, representing the deepest subsea production system ever installed by the operating company. The raw gas, which is mixed with water and liquid condensates, is transported via an 80-kilometer subsea tieback pipe to a floating production, storage, and offloading vessel. This initial vessel acts as a processing plant to remove the water and impurities from the gas stream. Once pre-treated, the clean gas is piped an additional 35 kilometers closer to shore to a dedicated hub terminal located just 10 kilometers off the coastline in shallow 30-meter waters. Here, a dedicated FLNG vessel cryogenically cools the gas into a liquid. Because this shallow water location is highly exposed to the turbulent Atlantic Ocean, engineers had to construct a massive kilometer-long breakwater out of millions of tons of quarried rock to physically shield the FLNG vessel and the visiting export ships from crashing waves. This multi-tiered, highly complex system is designed to safely produce 2.3 million tons of LNG per year, firmly positioning the Senegal-Mauritania Basin as a strategic and highly secure global energy hub. Exploration frontiers, the Orange Basin. The future of African hydrocarbon production is increasingly reliant on the successful exploration, appraisal, and development of these deep-water frontier basins. The integration of advanced 3D seismic imaging, deep crustal structural mapping, and sophisticated rock physics has allowed exploration geologists to visualize, identify, and confidently target highly lucrative reservoirs that were previously considered entirely inaccessible or fundamentally sub-commercial. The Orange Basin in the southwest and the Rovuma Basin in the southeast currently represent the absolute vanguard of global petroleum exploration science. The Orange Basin, a massive underwater geological depression straddling the maritime borders of Namibia and South Africa, originated in the late Jurassic epoch, approximately 150 million years ago. This was a violently active era in Earth's history, driven by the immense tectonic forces of continental rifting that literally ripped the ancient supercontinent of Gondwana apart, initiating the separation of the African and South American tectonic plates. The basin's earliest geological evolution was defined by the formation of deep continental rift valleys, which slowly filled with sediment and water over millions of years. During the volatile transition from continental rifting to the actual spreading of the new oceanic seafloor roughly 123 to 132 million years ago, the basin was invaded by catastrophic floods of molten lava associated with the Tristan mantle plume, a massive upwelling of abnormally hot rock from the Earth's core. These immense volcanic eruptions cooled into expansive rock formations known as seaward dipping reflectors, which are clearly visible on modern seismic imaging data, measuring over 5 kilometers in thickness. This solid igneous foundation created a prominent underwater mountain range known as the Outer High, which effectively bisects the modern Orange Basin into distinct inner and outer subbasins. The Outer High plays a pivotal geological role in controlling where oil and gas eventually formed and where it became trapped. During the subsequent Barium to Aptian eras, the young South Atlantic Ocean was narrow and had highly restricted water circulation. This created anoxic, or oxygen-starved, marine conditions. Millions of tons of microscopic marine life died and settled on the ocean floor, but because there was no oxygen to decompose them, their organic matter was perfectly preserved in the mud. Over millions of years, heat and pressure cooked this organic mud into world-class source rocks, commonly referred to as the Kudu Shale Formation. These Aptian source rocks are extraordinarily rich, boasting organic carbon contents ranging from 3 to 14%, and they have been thermally cooked to the perfect temperature window to generate light oil and wet gas. Recent deep-water discoveries profoundly validated this complex geological history, though they present highly distinct architectures. The Venus discovery, located in the outer subbasin, targeted a massive geological feature known as a basin floor fan. High-fidelity 3D seismic data revealed that during the early Cretaceous period, powerful underwater avalanches carried massive amounts of sand from the eastern African coastline across the Outer High and deposited them directly on top of the Aptian source rock. Geoscientists found this oil using a technique known as amplitude versus offset, or AVO. AVO involves ships firing intense sound waves deep into the Earth and measuring how they bounce back. Because sound travels at different speeds through porous sand filled with light oil compared to sand filled with dense salt water, the returning echoes create distinct, highly visible anomalies on computer screens. In the Venus field, these AVO anomalies were spectacular, revealing thick, blocky sands completely saturated with highly valuable light sweet crude oil. Conversely, the Graphite discovery in the inner sub-basin successfully targeted younger late Cretaceous channel sands. The oil at Graphite is trapped in complex subthrust structures that formed when the edge of the continental shelf buckled and collapsed under its own immense weight, creating geological folds that perfectly sealed the rising hydrocarbons. Despite an extraordinary 75% success rate across the 24 deep-water exploration wells drilled off the coast of Namibia since 2022, the actual commercialization of the Orange Basin faces severe geological hurdles. Extensive analysis of rock samples pulled from the depths has revealed major reservoir quality issues in certain areas. Most notably, portions of the reservoir rocks suffer from profound permeability degradation. Permeability is the ability of a rock to let fluids flow through its tiny interconnected pores. In parts of the Orange Basin, these microscopic pores have been severely clogged by a phenomenon known as chlorite cementation, where secondary minerals naturally grew inside the pore spaces over millions of years, essentially choking off the pathways the oil needs to flow into the well. This microscopic deterioration fundamentally threatens the ultimate recovery rates of the affected fields, as the oil is present but stubbornly refuses to move. Furthermore, the crude oil in the Orange Basin is incredibly gas-rich, presenting a compounding issue known as a high gas-to-oil ratio. If operators pump the oil too quickly, the sudden drop in pressure will cause the dissolved gas to violently bubble out of the liquid crude deep underground. This gas expands rapidly, creating a physical block that pushes the oil away from the wellbore, prematurely terminating the oil recovery phase. Consequently, while the volumetric scale of the Namibian discoveries is undeniably massive, successfully and economically recovering this oil will require bespoke, highly cautious pressure maintenance engineering. The Rovuma Basin, submarine channels, and staggering gas pays. Situated off the northern coast of Mozambique, the Rovuma Basin is characterized by an equally complex geological history spanning hundreds of millions of years. The basin's hydrocarbon foundation was laid down during the ancient Permo-Triassic to Jurassic phase, which generated extensive rift valleys filled with Karoo-age lake deposits and continental source rocks. These ancient source formations are extraordinarily rich in organic matter, with carbon averages of 5 to 6% and localized peak samples registering an incredible 17.4%. Subsequent flooding of the basin in the early to middle Jurassic introduced restricted marine rocks containing up to 9% organic carbon. The heat of the Earth began cooking these rocks into hydrocarbons during the late Cretaceous period, a process that continues into the present day. Over millions of years, the gas migrated upward into a variety of structural traps tightly sealed by robust, impermeable mudstones and shales. Exploration within the Rovuma Delta's ultra-deepwater sectors, particularly within the famous Area 1 and Area 4 blocks, has successfully targeted massive Paleocene and Oligocene submarine channels alongside highly porous Eocene-era turbidite bands. Seismic interpretation utilizing advanced broadband 3D imaging has been instrumental in perfectly mapping these complex deepwater sand systems. The drilling campaigns in Area 1 have been nothing short of historic. Exploration wells routinely intersected over 110 net feet of continuous pristine natural gas pay in high-quality Eocene reservoirs completely devoid of water saturation. These discoveries verified a distinct structural playstyle driven by a massive, well-developed fold and thrust belt hidden deep beneath the mudline. The recoverable resource estimates resulting from these geological conditions are monumental. Systematic geological assessments of the broader coastal province suggest mean undiscovered technically recoverable resources of 182.3 trillion cubic feet of gas and 11.6 billion barrels of oil. Technically recoverable means the resources can be extracted using current technology, regardless of whether it is currently profitable to do so. However, within the highly explored confines of the Area 4 concession alone, detailed appraisal drilling has already delineated over 85 trillion cubic feet of highly profitable, easily recoverable dry natural gas. The sheer, staggering scale of these structurally trapped gas resources ensures that the Rovuma Basin will confidently support multiple sequential phases of massive LNG infrastructure for generations to come. Production forecasts, capital expenditure, and the next decade of flow. The trajectory of African hydrocarbon production over the next decade will not be determined by geology alone. It will be defined by an intricate interplay between the aggressive financial capitalization of the new frontier discoveries and the strategic, highly funded revitalization of mature legacy assets. Driven by comprehensive field development plans and massive capital expenditure commitments from the world's largest energy corporations, the continental aggregate oil and gas output is forecasted to undergo a significant structural expansion. Based strictly on the deployment of capital and engineering timelines and excluding the unpredictable variables of international climate policy or domestic regulation, projections indicate that total African oil production is positioned to escalate from current baselines, potentially reaching an impressive 13.6 million barrels of oil equivalent by the year 2030. The revitalization of West African heavyweights is a critical, highly funded component of this forecast. Nigeria, despite having experienced sporadic supply disruptions and chronic upstream underinvestment over the past several years, is currently executing aggressive capital strategies designed to violently reverse its production declines. The Nigerian operational environment is experiencing a massive capital resurgence. This is evidenced by major final investment decisions, the critical moment when a corporation officially approves the billions of dollars needed for construction. A prime example is the Bonga North development, a newly sanctioned 110,000 barrels per day expansion aimed at sustaining and boosting output at Nigeria's existing offshore hubs. Furthermore, immense capital commitments, including a projected $1.5 billion revitalization of the aging Usan deep water field, directly support aggressive internal targets to push aggregate Nigerian national production back up towards 2.5 to 3.0 million barrels per day by the end of the decade. Angola presents a model of highly managed, heavily financed production stabilization. The Angolan deepwater sector has successfully attracted the massive capital required to mitigate the natural geological depletion curves of its legacy aging fields. Projections strongly indicate that Angola will successfully maintain its high production baseline of approximately 1.1 million barrels per day straight through 2030. This impressive stabilization is financially underwritten by 250,000 barrels per day of newly sanctioned capacity scheduled to come online shortly, supplemented by an additional 100,000 barrels per day of capacity currently awaiting an imminent final investment decision. In North Africa, Libya is actively targeting a return to a 2 million barrel per day production capacity, leveraging the incredibly low extraction costs of its massive onshore reserve base. But the most explosive volumetric growth forecasted for the upcoming decade will materialize directly from the newly de-risked deepwater frontiers. In the Orange Basin, operators are actively transitioning from exploration to multi-billion-dollar development phases. Total Energies is expected to reach a final investment decision for the massive Venus project by 2025, while Galp Energia targets a 2027 investment decision for the Mopane complex. Assuming the successful execution of these concurrent field development plans, and assuming engineers can successfully mitigate the aforementioned rock permeability constraints, Namibian deepwater oil production is projected to confidently reach between 250,000 and 400,000 barrels per day by the mid-2030s. This unprecedented influx of capital will essentially birth an entirely new petrostate from a zero baseline. Senegal is experiencing a similar immediate production ramp-up. The Sangomar Phase 1 development is financially modeled and technically engineered to peak at nearly 97,000 barrels per day by 2025. Natural gas production forecasts present an equally steep, heavily funded upward curve. This growth is driven entirely by capital expenditure directed towards LNG export facilities and domestic gas-to-power electrical architectures. Financial and energy analysts suggest that sub-Saharan gas supply will quadruple by the year 2050, fundamentally driven by these massive new non-associated dry gas projects. The Rovuma LNG project in Mozambique represents one of the largest single capital sinks in the history of the continent. The Phase 1 field development plan targets an initial production capacity of 15 million tons per annum. While final investment decisions for the massive onshore components remain in fluid negotiation stages, conservative financial forecasts model the commencement of these massive export volumes by 2028, operating in parallel with the already functioning offshore FLNG vessels. Because these frontier gas reserves in Mozambique and Senegal are overwhelmingly non-associated, meaning they are not tied to crude oil, their capital development and production timelines are cleanly decoupled from the pricing constraints and production quota dynamics typical of crude oil ventures. This separation allows for uninterrupted volumetric growth tailored specifically to capitalize on global LNG spot market demands. Ultimately, upstream analytical models suggest that under current capital expenditure commitments, the African oil and gas sector is positioned to generate an astonishing average of $109 billion annually in aggregate governmental revenues through 2030, a figure that serves as the absolute financial bedrock for the continent's broader macro-industrialization and poverty eradication strategies. The vast array of analytical data, geological evidence, and engineering blueprints synthesized throughout this part outlines a profound structural evolution occurring within the African hydrocarbon sector. Rather than facing an immediate phase-out in the era of global energy transition, the continent is systematically repositioning itself as an indispensable dual-capacity energy provider to the global economy. The mature, highly prolific onshore and offshore basins of Nigeria, Angola, Algeria, and Libya are successfully utilizing targeted multi-billion-dollar capital expenditures and highly optimized extraction technologies to stabilize their baseline output, maximizing the lifespan and profitability of their legacy reserves. Simultaneously, the extraordinary historic geological discoveries achieved in the ultra-deepwater Orange and Rovuma basins have permanently altered the global reserve map. These frontiers are introducing massive volumes of highly valuable light crude oil and clean-burning, non-associated dry natural gas to a world market that remains deeply reliant on fossil fuels for its baseline stability. The fundamental success of this continental transition relies entirely on the unprecedented scale of infrastructure development currently underway. The monumental engineering triumphs represented by the heated East African crude oil pipeline, the desert-spanning Trans-Saharan gas pipeline, the record-breaking Dangote refinery, and cutting-edge floating liquefaction deployments like the Coral Sul and Greater Tortue Amiens projects demonstrate an incredible localized capacity for mastering immense logistical, thermal, and environmental challenges. While highly specific subsurface geological risks, such as the chlorite cementation threatening flow rates in parts of the Namibian deepwater, require highly customized subsea engineering solutions to overcome, the broader aggregate financial and geological data strongly supports a decade of sustained, explosive volumetric production growth. By seamlessly integrating export-oriented liquefied natural gas projects with urgent domestic market obligations and massive downstream refining expansions, the African energy sector is fundamentally ensuring its long-term commercial resilience. In doing so, it is securing the critical multi-generational revenue streams that will dictate the continent's economic trajectory well into the mid-century, cementing its role as a cornerstone of the future global energy system.